How do I stop this? I can't. All right.
Wait, did we go live again?
We did. We did. I keep forgetting this one thing, right?
How do they
Um,
fool me once, fool me twice?
it's ridiculous. I know. I know. It's my excuse is I turned 65 last week.
Okay, then we cannot discuss what we were discussing 5 seconds ago because this will be a surprise to the audience whenever they
Yeah,
hear about
but it's September 2027.
it. Okay.
So
Okay.
we should talk about it, and if we know anybody who could help organize it, because it'll need some administrative
Yeah,
organization.
I have some idea. I'll let you know in private because again, this is a surprise for the
Yes.
people. So we're like the Frankfurt School. The elites know better. The people should just wait for their turn to figure out the truth that they cannot reach.
That's as old as Plato.
Yep. Yeah.
Did you anyway, we'll talk about it in a minute. So what can we talk about that is public information and not part of the topic? God, I can't believe I did it again. It's okay, so this is what you need to remind me.
But I did literally.
The data, no, but it's all pre-programmed. I think, God, it's anyway, okay. It's because we use the same Zoom address. I know why it's happening, and I can't get it into my habit, to change my behavior as a consequence. Maybe Marcuse is right. Some of us just cannot exit the cave.
Civilization as a source of misery. No, that was
There you go.
Freud, I think.
Well, big influence on Marcuse,
Yeah.
so that's okay.
By the way, what happened? Do you know a guy called, where is he? George Walsh. He wrote an excellent essay on.
He did. He did. It's yeah. It's. I was going to mention that essay in the Objectivist. Um, what happened to him?
Yes, I
I think
haven't seen. Like you literally Google him and there's nothing.
you can find some stuff, and you know who's made some of his stuff public is Brian Kaplan.
Oh, okay.
Brian Kaplan is a huge George Welsh fan, and he has found a bunch of his old recordings from Objectivist conferences and other places, and they're up on our YouTube channel somewhere.
Oh,
So
I think I found a couple of things when I was teaching the Marxism course for ARI. But that's basically it. You find it's not even on YouTube. It's some weird without like
check
thumbnails
Brian
or.
Kaplan's blog. Put in Walsh on Brian Kaplan's blog. I think you'll find a link there to where he's recovered them and put them up.
Oh,
But
okay.
Walsh spoke at Objectivist conferences through, I mean, maybe the first two. I don't think he was there in 87. So by 87, he was already gone. I think he sided with David Kelly. So maybe he spoke for David Kelly, but then he got disgusted by David Kelly as well. And he kind of went in and did his own thing. Um, and kind of disappeared, unfortunately. And so there's stuff in the Objectivist of his. There used to be tapes of his being sold by Second Renaissance Books, or maybe in the Ayn Rand bookstore. There might be some stuff of his.
Okay.
Check out the Ayn Rand bookstore.
So here's a challenge to any of our viewers who is, I don't know, into that type of archival stuff. I'm looking for anything by George Walsh, any criticism of Marxism, New Left, and most importantly, people, if anyone was in that John Redpath seminar on Marxism, the seminar that gave these lectures that are on YouTube, the Institute has released them. He also gave a package of notes. I've been trying to find these notes. I've contacted Harry Binswanger. No one seems to have these notes. These notes would be treasure for me. If anyone has them, please get in touch.
Okay. Yeah. So for Walsh, check out Brian Kaplan. All right, let's start. We already started, but here is the formal start.
The radical fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Book Show with Nikos, our Sunday program, regular Sunday program. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm experiencing some form of insanity where I keep doing the same thing, expecting different results. But I keep starting the show about 5 minutes too early. I will figure this out at some point. I'll have to put up a big sticker on my screen. Anyway, hi, Nikos.
We don't do this non-organic thing. We already said hi.
Yeah, we already said hi in the but recorded session, so something like that. Anyway, all right. So today we're talking about the Frankfurt School and the concept, if there is such a thing as cultural Marxism. We'll talk about that. We want to talk about also kind of the impact of the Frankfurt School and the influence on postmodernism, but also, and I think this is where we'll start, Nikos, is give us a little bit of a picture of what's happening in the world, where the school is arising from. I think it's founded in 1923, so this is a kind of a post World War I. So what's going on in the world, both in terms of political world, but also cultural world, but also what is happening intellectually in the world that these people are coming out of?
Yeah, so if we had to describe Frankfurt School in 4 words, it would be make sense of defeat. Defeat. Throughout its history, the Frankfurt School deals with tragedy after tragedy. Tragedy for their own worldview, but also for the world. So they come up after the First World War. So already for them, so these are disillusioned Marxist, all from a bourgeois background. We can talk a bit more later about that. And they have to explain 2 things. Number 1 is, how is it that the workers cheered and joined an imperialistic war, a war for their bosses, which left behind an Armageddon of dead people? That's the first existential shock they have to explain. Imagine being a Marxist at that time, right? So you have one thing for sure, that the working class of each country, they are brothers with each other. So you know for sure that they're not going to fight and die for the bosses. Not only they go and fight and die, they do it enthusiastically.
And on both sides, and on all the different sides, right?
And on all the different sides. And even in Germany, the Social Democratic Party votes for the war expenses in the parliament. It's very difficult to convey to people how crazy this is. Imagine, I'll give a random example. Imagine if during the lockdowns, Cato Institute, for example, would say, we are in favor of the lockdowns. Imagine if you're a libertarian, it's like, oh, this is my whole world is collapsing. This is what happened with Marxists when the Social Democratic Party vote for the war credits. And after 1919, they go through a second shock. In 1919, immediately after the war, there is a revolution in Germany, a proper working class communist revolution. People might have heard it as the Spartacist uprising with Rosa Luxemburg and Karl Liebknecht. And the second shock is that this uprising is defeated. And defeated by whom? By other workers and by the Social Democratic Party, of course, together with right-wing paramilitary troops. So these Marxists have to explain, how is it that everything we predict fails? First, the workers support the bosses, and then workers put down the revolution of other workers. So our toolkit, what Marxism taught us, might not be enough. We have to go back to the whiteboard and try to figure out things from the start. The tools that Marxism gave us are not enough if we want to get to this emancipatory world beyond capitalism and beyond the exploitation.
So isn't there also one other kind of challenge for them, and that is the 1917 revolution? So communism comes about not where it's supposed to, right? Not where Marx predicts it, not where the theory predicts it, but in Russia, of all places, an agrarian society, and it's not the workers who bring it about. So again, while communism is established, a kind of communism from their perspective, it's now where Marx has been wrong.
So anywhere they look, the message is all the same. We need to think things over. And these people, the people who are the core of the group, early on mostly a guy called Max Horkheimer and Theodor Adorno, they decide that we have to expand beyond Marxism as orthodox Marxism. We have to become what today would call interdisciplinary. We have to check psychology. We have to check sociology. We have to check cultural studies, which back then were not even a thing. We have to use every tool available to try to understand and undermine the existing social order. And this gave birth to their intellectual child, which is what we would call critical theory, what most people have heard as critical theory.
So how would you define, what would you consider actual critical theory?
Yeah, so critical theory, let's think about it this way. Critical of what? First of all, critical of the existing world. So the first command of critical theory is don't take the world for granted. They say, look, we can never properly understand the world fully. Why? Because there is no outside of the world. If you try to criticize capitalism, you're still within capitalism. And this begs the question, then what do we do? Then they say the best thing we can do is try to put ourselves in a position where we are opposed to capitalism. Now, the big question is, can you find this position? You just told us that we can never properly, truly understand the world. So how can you be in a position to criticize a world that you cannot understand? We'll never find that out. But they say that through this concept, criticizing, posing questions, resisting even the simplest practices that this world gives you. For example, consume or enjoy popular music. By this constant criticism and resistance, we can find ourselves in a position where we put barriers to the cause of things as they are, to everyday life. And somehow critical theory, this constant critique and this constant questioning might become this midwife, this bridge that will take us from where we are to a world beyond capitalism. It will give birth to this new thing, which will be a post-capitalist society. And if you have questions how this will happen, I have the same question, and Frankfurt School never answers this basic question. If you're telling us that everything we do, even the most, let's say, primal thing like the sexual activity, if you're telling us that even our instincts are very heavily influenced by capitalism, then how can we find ourselves in a position where we can criticize it and we can properly understand it? They never answer this question. The question always turns down to something like, trust me, bro, somehow I know better.
So they're in Germany in the 1920s. And obviously, this is a time of the Weimar Republic, and there's a lot of economic, cultural, and other angst. They're big supporters of kind of the avant-garde art movement, and kind of they're critical of they're critical of a lot of conventional art for sure, even the kind of more cutting-edge art. They seem to be, in art in particular, seem to be motivated by nihilism. How much nihilism is going on here?
Well, okay, so the person who is, again, remember, there are two main figures at this time in the Frankfurt School, Max Horkheimer and Theodor Adorno. By the way, both of them, they are the sons, not just of the bourgeoisie, they are the sons of some of the most prominent members of the bourgeoisie. So Adorno, his father was a businessman, his mother, for God's sake, was an opera singer, and wow, his aunt was a piano virtuoso. So Adorno was this music child prodigy. Unfortunately, he didn't stick with music. But yeah, he starts as a music critique, and it's very interesting to see what is he's famous for two things. The one is criticizing Donald Duck, on how Donald Duck is a tool of capitalism. We'll see about this in a second. And the other thing is his criticism of music, and most specifically of jazz. So what is the problem that he has with jazz? So think about it this way. He says that jazz, you might think that has this element of liberation, because remember, these people claim that we just want to liberate the individual. We're not collectivists here. We just want to make sure that we push, let's say, we push humanity to absolute freedom. So Adorno would say, you might think that jazz is this, you come up on the spot with your own ideas, you break the rules, but actually, this is a false revolt, because you are still within the parameters of an oppressive system. So when, for example, Charlie Parker does his crazy stuff, when he walks out from the club, it's still capitalism over there. He says something like, these crazy solos in jazz are like the spasms of an erotic who is in the sexual act and he's climaxing too early because he's existential in horror. It's like, what happens when you're existential in horror? You climax early. The same thing happens with jazz. Now, the interesting thing with Adorno is how little curiosity he actually had about jazz. So he writes this famous piece in the 30s. He doesn't know anything about American jazz. He doesn't know about Sidney Bechet or Armstrong or Duke Ellington. And anyway, then when the Nazis come to power, he goes to the US. He is in LA at the same time with Charlie Parker, at the same time with Art Pepper. You'd expect, you wrote a huge essay about jazz. Just go down the road and go listen to some jazz. No. It's like, it's like that brilliant line that Zizek said, I don't need to read a book to review it. I'm a theorist.
There you go. There you go.
Anyway, so this was Adorno. Now,
So
the big question is, was he an elitist? So was he defending some higher tradition? No. Or was he, you called it a nihilist? And to be honest, I couldn't figure that out. It's like he goes from the one to the other. He will say, of course, we appreciate traditional art, but traditional art has served its purpose. What's next and whatever comes next is never good enough.
So he didn't really publish any positive reviews of, I don't know, some of the crazy modern music that was being modern noise, I would call it, that was being put out during that period.
Well, I mean, you would know more about that type of no. So, for example, he criticized Stravinsky, but again, it's very difficult for me to understand.
But again, Stravinsky is still melodic, it's rhythmic.
Exactly.
And he criticizes Stravinsky because he harkens back to a primitive, and it's true, he does. I mean, his criticism of Stravinsky is not bad. I mean, it's based on actual stuff. But I haven't seen anything where, what does he think of Schoenberg or John Case or, some of this, clearly atonal, no harmony, no melody, kind of call it music. I'm curious if it reached that kind of nihilistic stage. Do you know what their view of, for example, of people like Kandinsky and kind of the avant-garde painting?
First of all, it wouldn't be their view, it would just be Adorno. Horkheimer didn't have much to do with that. Walter Benjamin, who was the most famous cultural critic, although he was not technically in the Frankfurt School, he was a big influence. So Benjamin more had to do with cinema, so it would be Adorno. I don't have a good answer because I don't know very well that types of music. I know Jonathan knows something like that because we discussed it in my Patreon community the other day. He seems to know more. If he's watching, he can drop us a comment what Adorno thought about atonal music. But since I don't know this, let me tell you why he didn't like Donald Duck.
Yes.
So when he goes to, I mean, we are jumping ahead here, but when he and Horkheimer get to the United States, you would expect that the reaction would be, okay, instead of me now being on the way to Birkenau, I am to Los Angeles. Thank you. Whatever is up there, life is as good as it could be.
Let's remind everybody, these guys were all Jewish, which is, we'll talk about later, but they were all Jewish, so they left Germany because they were heading to concentration camps if they didn't.
Yes, Walter Benjamin, for example, who didn't leave Europe on time, killed himself in a Spanish hotel because he wouldn't be able to escape. I mean, that was tragic because eventually he would, but he didn't have faith enough, so he killed himself. Anyway, and these people lost many people they knew in the Holocaust. But when Adorno and Horkheimer find themselves in the United States, they only have complaints, complaints after complaints after complaints. And particularly, they find everything in the United States shallow, very not good enough for their taste. So for Adorno and for Horkheimer, music and anything that has to do with popular culture, they call it something like, it's like the sound of the food on the dog's plate. When you throw food on the dog, they hear or you rattle the thing for the cat. It creates a Pavlovian reaction that perpetuates your cat's or your dog's servitude to you. And Adorno says the same thing happens with popular culture. It puts you into this instinctive mindset to be a slave. And particularly, they have harsh things to say about Donald Duck. I mean, this tells you all you need to know about these guys. And because they say Donald Duck is an instrument for the subjugation of the working class. Why? Because remember, in every episode, in every page of the comic, Donald Duck is beaten into submission by Scrooge McDuck. So they say Donald Duck, it conditions the working class to take a beating and to think that it is funny. So they were not the funniest people to have around. They were not the most exciting people to have at a dinner party. And they went to many dinner parties, by the way. They were part of the high society, even in LA. They had houses in great areas. They had big mansions, and yet it was not good enough.
So I asked the authority about Adorno and Schoenberg, right? Arnold Schoenberg in music, and this is what ChatGPT says. Adorno regarded Schoenberg as the decisive modern composer, the figure who made music face the crisis of modernity honestly. He wrote a section on Schoenberg in Progress. He contrasted him with Stravinsky, which was hearkening backwards. Schoenberg is moving us forward. If you listen to Schoenberg, it's not music. I mean, it's a rejection of music. It's a rejection of melody. It's a rejection of harmony, and it's exactly what appeals to him. And then Kandinsky in painting, it's the same. Adorno embraces Kandinsky. He's critical of him as well, but he embraces the breaking of form, the move away from representation in painting. God forbid you actually represent anything. Kandinsky just splashes of paint on canvas, and Adorno is excited about that, although he's also critical of, he thinks this, he has to be critical, right? That's part of, it's too cerebral for him.
Yep.
It's too cerebral. So, although what's cerebral about splashing paint on canvas, I have no idea. But for Adorno, Kandinsky is too cerebral. But yes, so they're very much, Adorno at least, is very much celebrating, I think, a nihilism in art, a destruction of form. Again, it's anything that might serve a capitalist culture, anything that might serve this consumer mentality, this more, this desire for consumption. He is celebrating, and certainly this kind of modern art is a rejection of all of that.
Shall we put it differently? Everything and anything that the average person who is not an aristocrat of music like Adorno, anything that person can understand and enjoy, for Adorno is suspicious.
Mm-hmm.
So it's of all the conspiracy theories, and we were going to discuss this thing about the Frankfurt School, the one thing which is absolutely true is they gave to the new left the elitism, the anti-working class attitude that they still have. And you see, for example, in England, they talk about the working class is gammon, they are all racist, all our problems are because of them. If only they would be like us. If only they would be like us. This starts from the Frankfurt School.
So is this part of how they explain the failure of Marxism, in the sense Marx was too positive about the proletarian? He was too positive about the working class?
Now, until at least the 60s, they would not dare to go that far. So they dance around it. The other thing we need to say is that since they went to the US, Horkheimer, who was very pragmatic, he said, guys, not anymore talk about Marxism, capitalism, a revolution. No, we find code words. So they do all these criticisms, but they dance around. So they don't speak anymore in Marxist categories. They don't speak anymore about revolutionary subject and all that stuff. But there is no question that the Frankfurt School is the biggest deviation from Marxism. You will hear all the conservative pundits calling them neo-Marxist, communist 2.0. For me, the Frankfurt School is not the victory and the return of Marxism. It is the defeat of Marxism. It is the stone that you put in the graveyard and you said, Marx, rest in peace. We are done with you.
So I think that's all right, but isn't there ultimate, they can't explain the transition, but what is the world in which they believe that, the ideal rests in? That is communism, right? That is very similar to kind of Marx's kind of end state, where from each according to his ability to each according to his need, and nobody has to work too much, and everything.
Yeah, that's later. Provided. That's Marcuse. That's definitely Marcuse. But actually, let me support what I said. Shall we first say where they deviate, and then when they agree with Marxism? So let's take it systematically, so that what we say becomes clear. For first major deviation from Marx, Marx claimed that what makes you really human is your capacity to work, is your capacity to produce. And taken out of context, even you and me could find something nice in it. There's this Prometheanism in Marxism. Let's conquer nature. Yeah, the Frankfurters don't like this at all. They have this Dionysian, Freudian idea that we have this instinct for joy and for play and for idleness at the end of the day. Idleness. The ideal is a world of play, a world of eros, as Marcuse would later put it. Down with Prometheus, up with Dionysus. That would be the first deviation.
And is this true of all of them, or just Marcuse?
No, that's you see elements of this also with Adorno and Horkheimer, because they criticize the socialist regimes for the same thing, and here we get the second point, the conquest of nature. For Marx, the conquest of nature is very important. Trotsky had this brilliant line, in my view: instead of the conquering of man to man, we'll have the conquering of nature from man. Anyway, I butchered it. It's a nice quote. The Frankfurtians disagree with this because they claim that the conquest of nature leads very soon to the conquest of man. So they don't like this Promethean view. The big difference, we already touched upon it, the working class for Marx obviously is the revolutionary subject. For Marx, the working class is the angel of history who comes here to show us the way and lead us to the promised land. For the Frankfurt School, it is just part of the problem. It is not only it is not the revolutionary class, it is a constant source of disappointment, already from World War I. Another major difference, there is no vanguard Leninist party. None of these people ever joined the party or advocated for a party. There is no theory then of revolution. Marcuse would give something like it. Yep. And the most important thing, they move the emphasis from the economic and the political field to the cultural field. And an even more unspeakable sin in the Marxist universe is this emphasis on psychology. Mm-hmm. Why would the Marxists care about psychology? History is not made by individuals who think. History is made by classes. So all these things, we have to realize, are unspeakable sins against Marxism. And to give you an example that all our audience will understand, imagine if I came to you today and I told you, Yaron, I don't believe A is A. I don't think human beings have free will. And I'm an anarcho-capitalist, but I am a new objectivist. You tell me something is wrong here. Like either you don't understand objectivism.
I think I know some people online who argue that. Yeah, I think there's a movement called neo-objectivists out there that kind of picks and chooses what they like and what they don't like.
Oh, okay. Well, see, it's not only with Marxism.
You just created a new movement. But
excellent. That's how I view them related to Marxism. Now, what is the similarity? The similarity is that in the same way as Marx thinks that for everything that happens in the world, in the last instance, the problem is capitalism, the same happens with Frankfurt School. The villain is still capitalism. For anything from sexual dysfunctions to people being bored, to people not, to the family being disintegrated, the problem at the end of the day is always, always, always capitalism. Or as they would put it, in the last instance, it is capitalism. So it is an anti-capitalist movement, but it breaks with all the main tenets, and also it breaks with the most dangerous tenets of Marxism when it comes to Marxism as a political project. So they are the end of socialism as an organized movement rather than a rebirth of it.
So, so they rebel against, obviously, a rejection of capitalism, a rebellion against capitalism. They endorse kind of a communist ideal as the end of time, just like pre-Marx did. I mean, there were plenty of communists pre-Marx, or at least people who believed in that ideal. Marx didn't invent that conception. The early Christians who believed in communal living and sharing everything, and to each according to his need, from each according to his abilities. That's not a Marxist invention. So so they're not really Marxist. What are their intellectual influences? I mean, from what I've seen, it strikes me there's definitely, Plato and kind of all the bad guys in history, right? Plato and Hegel, so therefore Kant, and as you mentioned, a lot of psychology and psychology, I guess primarily Freud. So maybe elaborate a little bit on kind of how Plato and particularly Hegel fit into this story.
Yes, the way mostly Plato, first of all, the problem is none of these people gave us very, let's say, concrete view of their philosophy. The only person who did this is actually Marcuse, and he does this in two places. The one is the one-dimensional man, which I would say if people would read one thing, read this. And the other is Eros and Civilization, which he wrote before this. So where does Plato and Hegel fit in this? So for Marcuse, probably also for the others in the Frankfurt School, there are two levels, let's say, of reality. The reality as it appears to us, as we think we understand it, and also reality as it actually is. So that's why you will hear, for example, the discussion about negative dialectics. It means these dialectics that help you go beyond what you actually see. So this is something very Hegelian, and you'll find also something very Platonist it is. So Marcuse grows up as a Hegel scholar, and he's the one who actually brings Hegelian dialectics to the school. And so that's the main idea, that somehow there was one time back in the day where we're at one with our true nature, where we were living happily, we were sharing. Apparently there was a lot of sexual activity all the time. Basically that was life, joy and sexual activity all with all.
So the pleasure principle, it's all about pleasure, a kind of hedonism.
Yes, exactly. It was this Garden of Eden, basically. But then something happens, and this something is that people started naming, this is mine, this is yours. So we lost our essence, we lost our true essence. And that's when they would put also Freud, because Marx would say it was the element of property and of scarcity. But they would also add here, they would throw in Freudian psychoanalysis, and they would say, Marx told us that the way we experience the world is flawed because it is skewed by socioeconomic factors. Freud tells us that the way we experience the world is flawed because it is skewed by subconscious, by our instincts or whatever. And the Frankfurt School says these two needs to be combined. You're not only skewed by the fact that your boss is exploiting you. The fact that your boss is exploiting you is skewing even your subconscious and your instincts. Anyway, we went away from Hegel, but history then is this process towards which overcoming this alienation for your true self. And somewhere there, somewhere on the other side, we will find again ourselves being reunited with our true essence, with our species, which is close to what Marx called species being. But this is not going to be through production, as Marx experienced it. This will be through play, through love. And there's a very good objectivist critique of this. It's an essay by Nathaniel Branden on capitalism and non-ideal. It's his essay on alienation. In my view, it's not in my view, it's my favorite essay by Branden, and he's criticizing this whole idea of alienation, going back again to Hegel, going back to the medieval times. So if our viewers...
Very specifically criticizing Erich Fromm.
Erich Fromm, yeah.
And Erich Fromm is part of this circle of the...
So Erich Fromm is, let's say, the psychology wing of the Frankfurt School, particularly once it moves to the US. At some point, Erich Fromm goes his own way. Marcuse, by the way, also goes his own way. Funny thing is that when Marcuse is most popular, not only he's not in the Frankfurt School, he's at bad intellectual terms with Adorno and Horkheimer, but we can get to that. So if someone wants to understand better the historical trajectory, the intellectual trajectory, there are two sources. The one is obviously this essay by Branden, and also in this famous book by Roger Scruton with a brilliant title, Fools, Frauds and Firebrands, it has a good genealogy going from Hegel to Frankfurt School. Of course, Scruton is a bit more sympathetic to Hegel, but you will be able to connect the dots for people who want a deeper dive into that.
But there's also the essay we were talking about this earlier, by Walsh in the Objectivist, George Walsh, harder to find.
So in order to find it, you can find it in the Objectivist, or you can try to persuade Yaron, if he has a say in this, to release all these things out there in the world, so it will be...
I wish I could. I would love to do that. But it's called Herbert Marcuse, Philosopher of the New Left.
Yes.
And it's a great essay because he really ties it, and this is where I want to take this, is the impact that Marcuse has, and maybe broader than Marcuse, does the Frankfurt School have on the rise of the New Left in the 1960s in the United States?
Yes. So of all these people, so now let's get to the meat of the situation. How impactful is the Frankfurt School? Because again, if we hear right-wingers and conservatives, they are the reason that West went downhill. So Adorno and Horkheimer, I don't think there's anyone outside of their circles that ever read them or they had an impact. The person who truly had an impact was Herbert Marcuse, who was a later addition to the school at some point, mostly towards the 30s. And Marcuse is in the United States. He's not even in Frankfurt. So there are two books of Marcuse that are important here. The first is Eros and Civilization in the 50s. And this book talks about, to put it in terms that we'll understand, it brings back this Dionysian aspect, that we have all these repressive instincts, and that capitalism does not only oppress the worker in terms of surplus value, but also it takes this instinct that we have for joy, for creation, recreation, procreation, and directs it towards work. So if you think about the hippie in the Woodstock, it's not necessarily that they've read Marcuse, but they definitely were impacted by this idea that life is more than work, and reason has put an iron cage around our lives, and it is through instinct that we will pave the way to revolution. But then the big thing is in 1964, this book, One Dimensional Man, this book actually, we know it had an impact because it became a bestseller. It sold hundreds of thousands of copies. Wow. So by the time the people were out in the streets with 1968, the May revolt in Paris, we know that Angela Davis was his student. So most people had actually read this book. Marcuse was something like, who would be today an example? An intellectual superstar. Think of Chomsky maybe later, although he was a different type. Think of Zizek in the 2000s. So he was someone who, when he would show up to a university, the student radicals would treat him in the way they would treat Bob Dylan, for example. He was an actual star. And Marcuse was committed to violent revolution, which is not the case with Adorno and Horkheimer. So for me, the true villain here is Marcuse. Adorno and Horkheimer are mostly, they view themselves as these bourgeois, serious intellectuals. They tiptoe with ideas, but it's like, look, basically, I want to have a bourgeois life. Don't take all these things too seriously.
They have to, I mean, they have a huge impact on, I mean, I think they have a huge impact. I mean, critical theory has a huge impact today at our universities, right?
Today, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
But for example, in the 60s,
yeah,
actually the radical students wanted to cancel Adorno.
Yeah.
They attack his classes, they attack his seminar room, they have struggle sessions with him. One time they occupy a room where Adorno was supposed to teach, and Adorno calls the police.
Yeah.
And then you can imagine the struggle sessions. How dare you do that? Marcuse is writing letters from New York, from California to Adorno. What you did is something which is unacceptable. And Adorno is so agitated with all this. It had an impact, allegedly, to his weak heart, and he died. So think about the person who is more consciously, let's say, a Tuchi, was definitely Marcuse. Adorno and Horkheimer were the intellectuals who unleashed something that they did not expect, and they were not ready for what they unleashed. And to be honest, mostly their impact came later.
Yes.
In the 70s, in the 80s, and they paved the way for problematizing enlightenment and reason. And we can discuss their critique of instrumental reason. But it is Marcuse who is the actual villain. And the masks sleeps with Marcuse with his essay, Repressive Tolerance. His essay from the 1960s. And I encourage the audience, whatever you've heard about this essay, go and read it for yourself. It's so bad. It reminded me the monologue by Tuchi to Peter Keating. I couldn't believe what I was actually reading. So to put it very simply, Marcuse says, first of all, he opens by saying, look, we're all here for individual rights and tolerance and the Enlightenment. But he said, and he starts by quoting John Stuart Mill, but he said, even liberals will accept that rights apply to thinking people. Rights would not apply to, how do we call it without using the R word, someone whose mind is not, someone who's mentally challenged.
Yep.
He would say rights do not apply to someone who's mentally challenged. But because we live in capitalism,
everybody,
all of you are basically mentally challenged barbarians.
Yeah.
So rights do not apply to you because you do not understand how brainwashed you are. Therefore, he says, you need people like us to say who has rights. So till everyone gets above the stage of being a barbarian, there will be no free speech for defenders of capitalism, for nationalists, for racists, or even for people who want to cut down the welfare state. So there will be no free speech for Yaron, in Marcuse's view. And when everyone stops being brainwashed, then again, we can all be tolerant. And I'm sure people will say, come on, you're making this up. You can find the essay available online, and you can go and read it and decide for yourselves.
And this strikes me as very influential in modern cancel culture. The whole idea of the new left, the kind of the left of the 2000s, of claiming they're for free speech, but yet this speech is, you cannot talk about it, you cannot say it. They would like that, silence pro-capitalist and pro-anything. So Marcuse's influence has gone way beyond the 60s and very much into the activist left of today.
Yes, because Marcuse has the guts that Adorno and Horkheimer don't have to say, okay, let's put these, we say this society is totalitarian and authoritarian, anything to take it down goes. And because we are men of the Enlightenment, supposedly, we cannot unleash the red Khmers out there. So we will dress it in a way that, of course, we are for tolerance. But to get to tolerance, we need to have a society of rational human beings. Now we have a society of beasts of burden. Therefore, shut up and wait for your betters to decide when you barbarians can have rights.
And they shift the revolution in a sense from the proletarian to the students.
Oh yeah, worse. Marcuse actually unleashes the ghetto.
Yes.
He
Plus the
unleashes
students, that combination.
the ghetto and the students. Yes, he gives rise to identity politics. Notice, not in terms of, and there were many good reasons, by the way, let's be very clear, in the 60s to try to find emancipatory politics for black people. There were very obvious injustices there. But Marcuse does not do that. He uses them as trump cards, not to get individual rights, because he doesn't believe in a society of individual rights. He wants them as the ground troops for the revolution. Because he realizes the working class cannot be anymore these ground troops, he wants the ground troops to be the blacks, the minorities, the students, and the peasants of the third world. So he looks, this third worldism that we call today, it has a very strong, he looks at Vietnam, Cuba, and China.
Yep.
So the great defender of humanity is looking at China during
Mao.
the time of Cultural Revolution, after the great leap forward with the tens of millions of death. This is where the great friend of humanity is looking for inspiration.
So you can see how, Marcuse, because he's arguing for revolution, inspires kind of the new left, not only the 60s left, which kind of disappeared, which we should talk about sometime, and why the new left kind of dissipated the way it did. But rising up, in the last decade or so, we're seeing Marcuse's influence really being everywhere.
And let's mention one more thing that Marcuse does, which is, again, very insidious. And Ayn Rand notices this in almost all the essays in The Return of the Primitive. Marcuse does a monumental shifting of the goalposts. Actually, the whole of Frankfurt School, but Marcuse is very clear about that. So the fact that capitalism delivers the good now becomes a damning factor for capitalism. It means that you are now even more brainwashed, so now you're even more oppressed. He has a line I tweeted about a couple of hours ago. People can find the line there. It's on page 10 on One Dimensional Man. And again, people need to read it because otherwise it's difficult to believe that someone would say that. He says something like the fact that the workers can now have cars, or black people can own a Cadillac, or a secretary can be as attractively made up as the daughter of her employer. All these things, he said, don't think that they are necessarily good things. These are just new forms of exploitation. So here you have someone actually telling you the fact that capitalism delivers the good is just a proof of why it's an exploitative system. Where have we seen this recently? In critical race theory. Oh, you think we have a black president, you think this means there's no racism? No, it means that racism is even more insidious because now you can't see it.
Yep.
It's a moving of the goalpost. It's an unfalsifiable assault on capitalism.
And it's clearly not Marxist.
It's clearly not, of course, because Marx, his whole theory was a rationalization for his collectivism and for his hatred for individualism. We don't know how Marx himself would, I wouldn't be surprised if he would do the same thing in the 60s, because for them, the constant is, I cannot stand that people are free to do whatever they want with their lives. This is the thing they cannot stand. This is their beef with capitalism.
And that they're doing things that they don't like. That is, it's not that they're just free to do stuff. It's instead of, being lazy and having sex all the time. And, Woodstock is their utopia, right? Woodstock is their ideal. And Ayn Rand talks about that in Apollo and Dionysus. I mean, it's a perfect Marcusean celebration, Woodstock is, right?
She calls them the Marcusean hordes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's my favorite. That was one of the first essays of Ayn Rand. And actually, I read these essays before I read anything else. And that's when I realized This woman has said everything that any critic of the left would ever want to say. Yes, and I encourage people to also read this essay or the actual history of Woodstock, because Woodstock is actually ugly.
Yeah.
Woodstock is not we're having a good time. Woodstock turned out almost like a primordial apocalypse now situation. So, and the essay makes clear how ugly it came, and it relied again on the man, on the rational bureaucrat, to send them helicopters and save them from themselves, because otherwise they would die from thirst and from hunger.
Yep. So let's dive a little bit into the philosophical kind of their philosophical claims, kind of their metaphysics and epistemology, because they at least Marcuse definitely has a metaphysics and epistemology. So what are their metaphysical and epistemological claims? What is their view of reason, and ultimately, what happens to individualism?
Yeah, so for that, if people want to go to the actual source, it's the Dialectics of the Enlightenment written by Horkheimer and Adorno. Now, the interesting thing is they write this book after the Holocaust, and their goal is we want to save the project of the Enlightenment, and we want to save the project of reason. But notice how they try to do it. So what is their main beef with reason? They say reason takes care of the means, but does not question the ends. So they will claim instrumental reason is what helped the Nazis to efficiently send the maximum amount of Jews to Birkenau.
Yeah, and you hear that critique of reason all the time. I hear it from anti-reason jokes out there. Reason is what leads us to the concentration camps, and you hear that from the religious right often, not just from the crazy left.
Forgetting, of course, that the Nazis were openly rejecting reason.
Absolutely.
So they say, okay, reason did not help anyone question if sending people to gas chambers was good. Then they would say the Aristotelian A is A is also problematic. Why? Because it means that it accepts things as they are. But we are Hegelians here. We know that they're dialectics. Things are not just as they are. And then they take it a step further. If you accept that things are what they are, that things have identity, then you are accepting the status quo. Mm-hmm. Then you are accepting the man-made. As Ayn Rand said, the metaphysical versus the man-made, they had the problem figuring that there is such a thing as metaphysical. So if you accept the identity of the things, you accept the status quo. They think that everything out there is man-made. Therefore, if you believe in reason, you get into some type of epistemological totalitarianism. That I know everything. I have figured out everything.
You hear that a lot as well, right? That idea has real currency out there in the culture.
Even Jordan Peterson quite often would say the problem with the Bolsheviks, they were too ideological. They were too sure of themselves.
Yes. Yep. Confidence and reason lead to the concentration camps.
Exactly. So they will say epistemological totalitarianism leads to real totalitarianism. And they sum it up this way. They say, look, Aristotle and A is what led us to this urge to control nature, which is what led us to this urge to control man, which is what led us to Auschwitz. I think it's over there in this work and in other post-war, you might have heard the line, something like, after Auschwitz, the categorical imperative of humanity is Auschwitz can never happen again.
Yep.
And what is the number one culprit of Auschwitz? Instrumental reason, which is another way for them of saying reason. A is A. So against, as we said before, the Prometheanism of nature to be commanded must be obeyed, they think that this is hubris. And this hubris was paid at Birkenau. This hubris was paid in the gulags. And this is the hubris we have to avoid. And then you ask, okay, so what's the proper epistemology? Your guess there is as good as mine.
Well, Walsh talks about in his essay on Marcuse, talks about their elevation of fantasy, of imagination, of a primacy of consciousness, right? Of they've got this Freudian idea. Your subconscious is somehow connected to human evolution, and is feeding you fantasies of the ideal. I mean, it's hard to say this with a straight face because it's so stupid and ridiculous. But he also connects it, which I thought was clever, to Plato's idea that what your subconscious is feeding you is memories of life before you were born, which was in the world of forms. They don't believe that, but they believe something very similar. They're taking Plato while rejecting his particular form of mysticism and replacing it with their mysticism.
So let's try to put it very simple so that it becomes step by step the absurdity, as you called it. And now we're doing something difficult because we're trying to explain something which is inexplicable.
Inexplicable.
Yeah. So let's put it this way. In capitalism, you do not live to your true potentiality. But somewhere out there, there is this version of yourself, which is your true self, this potentiality of your life outside of capitalism.
Which is suppressed by your subconscious, which is forced, right?
It's somewhere out there and somewhere here.
Yeah.
And somehow you can get in touch with. First of all, the question is, how do they know? Go figure. Now, how can we get access to this part of our subconscious? The solution, they say, is freedom. Freedom. What type of freedom? We will access this freedom if we get rid of actual freedom, if we get rid of freedom to trade, freedom of speech, says Marcuse. If that sounds weird, it's because it's dialectics.
Yep.
And it's very interesting to say, okay, guys, what is at the end of the road, though? What is the end of the road of all this? And the end of the road of all this is, if you remember from Atlas Shrugged, Directive 10-289, a moratorium of brains. Because Marcuse says, we've already produced enough.
Yep.
So what we need to do is to give for everyone the possibility to re-experience this way of life, which is our true potential, where you don't have to worry about anything. So we stop producing too much. Whatever we have, so because Marcuse says, what are your true needs? You don't need today we say iPhones. You don't need these things. You need something over your head, something to put in your mouth. So you will have all these things. We're all going to work for everyone else. Therefore, you will not anymore feel the oppression of reality, basically. And you will go back to this libidinal, ideal, platonic potentiality that capitalism has made you lose it. And in that way, also, your brain will develop beyond the barbarian that you are now are, and you will even be able to have freedom. So then we'll allow you freedom. People like us who actually know what is good for you. So this is how their metaphysics and epistemology translates to their politics. Their politics is, we need to find a way for people to be again in this liberated level of existence. And let's clarify, this is only Marcuse. The rest of the Frankfurt School does not want to give any culprits for the future because they said Marx didn't give it to them. We believe our mind is destroyed by capitalism, so a destroyed mind, how can we come up with an outline for the future? Again, at least at that they are consistent with their ideas. Except again for Marcuse, because again, Tuhi also wants to give us what is, he's like the Bond villain. He gives us the whole plan.
I mean, what's striking is when I read some of these quotes from Marcuse and his vision for what the world looks like, is how much this buys into kind of the Garden of Eden story.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I mean, this is pure Garden of Eden. Man is fallen. You know, what does the fall represent? He has to work for a living now. So there was a period in which we were just animals, where we didn't have to think. You remember, the fruit of knowledge is what Eve bites into. So we didn't have to think. We had no reason. We had no instrumental reason in their verbiage. We just lay around, enjoyed whatever. I don't think there was sex in the Garden of Eden, but there was maybe sensuality or whatever. There was some whim worshiping. We didn't have to work. And then the fall is we gain reason. And what's the payment we have to pay? We have to now work. And that is a penalty. And this is so, in many ways, this is so Christian or Jewish, doesn't matter. This is so biblical. And it seems to always return to that longing for a world in which you don't have to work. I mean, literally, he says, work is oppression, work is a lack of freedom. Trade is a violation of freedom. Employment is a violation of freedom. Coercion has nothing to do with freedom. You can do something voluntarily, but because you're psychologically conditioned to do it, you're not free in doing it. Freedom is pursuing whim, but in a different state, in a state where your whims are aligned with the Garden of Eden.
100%.
And of course, the Garden of Eden, you're not changing nature, right? The Garden of Eden, you're not doing the capitalist or the Marxist thing of a changing nature and improving your lot. You're just accepting nature the way it is. Yeah.
And maybe this is why these people knew that any proper Marxist would literally put them at the wall and shoot them, which is why after World War II, they have a choice. Do we return to West Germany, the capitalists were Germany, or the communist is Germany? Of course, they went back to capitalist West Germany because they wouldn't go to East Germany. And now we know the line by Ayn Rand that every philosophy is bad philosophy is a system of rationalization. And I don't want to psychologize. I wonder how much of this has to do with these people's aristocratic attitude and origin. For example, Walter Benjamin keeps fighting with his family in his 30s. Why do I have to work? You're a rich family. Give me money. Does it remind you of anything? Karl Marx did the same thing. He was fighting. We're going to do an episode about Marx, the man, at some point. He sends a letter at some point to his mother telling her, if you don't send me money, I'm going to submit myself to the Prussian authorities. Who does this to his mother?
But, not only does it remind me of Marx, but, I tell the story of the student at the University of Texas. I was doing a debate with a socialist, and the student came to the microphone and he says, and at the time it shocked me. I responded, but he says to me, I don't understand why when I graduate, I have to go to work. Why can't I be supported by the state and just pursue my hobbies and do what I feel like doing? And of course, the more I read about, the Frankfurt School, this is exactly the attitude, right? That is the ideal. The ideal is just to be able to sit around, play video games in your mother's basement, and somebody else to take care of you.
I'm laughing bitterly. Somewhere in the archives of the internet, there's a Facebook dialogue from 2010. Luckily, I've deleted my Facebook, but it's somewhere there.
Yeah.
Where I'm having exactly this discussion, but I am at the point of view of the student. It was around the time of the educational reform in the UK, and I was arguing that people should basically pay for my PhD. And someone asked exactly what you asked. And you know what? For the first time, I felt some element of shame/pride. And I basically backed down. I said, it was the first time I heard, oops. So if you have any pride inside you, when you realize that what actually you expect is other people for paying for your existence, you should at that point revolt. And these people, at least I was like 24. Yeah. These people never did that. They didn't do it in their 30s. Walter Benjamin didn't know how to make coffee, literally he didn't know how to make coffee. He left his wife and his child. Anyway, this is, a personal failure has nothing to do with one's intellectual pursuit. But here you see some harmony between the persona and the ideas.
And these were not aristocrats in the sense of aristocracy, right? Formal aristocracy. These were all upper middle class. They all came from upper middle class Jewish families. They're almost all Jews, and it came from successful business. Their parents were successful business people. Some of them, it's several generations of very successful wealth creation. Yes. Integrated into German society. These very assimilated Jews, Jews who thought the Germans would never turn on them because they were part of German society. And so these are the nouveau riche, and yet they're behaving like spoiled aristocrats, which is these are the kids of the nouveau riche. and they're behaving this way. So I mean, we still have to review a movie. So have you
Oh, yes.
watched the movie?
Of course.
Okay.
If people pay for stuff, we
Yeah.
don't deliver. We over deliver. I watched the movie. I watched every video review I could find.
Oh, you
I
did?
watched the whole stuff on
I just watched the
IMDb.
movie. So,
Okay.
Nikos over delivers Shazbot has given us the additional $500. So he has paid in $1,000. So we will do the movie review. So I want to, wrap this up, but there's still a few things I think that are important to cover. I think the most important thing is the impact they've had long term. So first I want to ask, what is the relationship between them and the postmoderns? And I don't want to get deep into postmoderns. We should do a separate show on that.
Of course.
But at least what is the relationship? And then what is your evaluation of the impact? We talked a little bit about this already on the world today, not the 60s, but the world today.
Yes. So the big picture, so if we want to be very specific, think about it this way. There's a German branch of philosophy and a French branch of philosophy. Both are bad. Postmodernism is more related to the
French and the German. That's all you have to say. Yeah.
But there is an element though, and the element is that with the Frankfurt School, criticism and deconstruction becomes resistance. Actually, becomes the only resistance because they're impotent for any other form of political action. Again, with the exception of Marcuse. And with postmodernism, this becomes a thing in itself. Also, how does Marcuse end his one-dimensional man? He basically calls to the ghetto and the minorities, and he finishes with the famous phrase, "It is only for the sake of those without hope that hope is given to us." This means go find anyone who is truly or imaginably still in a worse situation than the higher class in capitalism. They are the new subjects. So there you have the identity politics. They don't say much about feminism, but later this will become a thing. So deconstruction, the Luben proletariat and the minoritarian groups are the new revolutionary subject. These are two, and of course critique to instrumental reason. They do it from the point of view, we defend enlightenment, but then people will take the baton and will leave behind even the pretense of defending enlightenment. So this is the short story of the relationship. But there's not much, let's say, personal teacher-student relationship with postmodernism.
And impact on kind of the leftist culture today?
Oh yeah, they became standard for sociology. They became standard and they became standard, particularly with Marcuse, this model of the intellectual activist. This starts with Marcuse. This was not there with most of the other intellectuals of the left or even of the new left up to this point. Marcuse gives rise to this idea that now the university is a field of struggle. I mean, this is also a thing with the new left, but Marcuse is a good personification. So he becomes this focal point of, here's the example of the intellectual activist.
Yeah, and I think they had a huge impact on the world of arts and aesthetics, and particularly the world of criticism, of aesthetic criticism. Adorno, I think had a profound impact on film criticism, but also movies and also music and the plastic arts. So he covered the whole gamut, I think popular what's taught in universities today in terms of aesthetic criticism is very much influenced by them.
And one last thing about the influence. You have seen all the reactionary right-wingers who post that quote from Fight Club with Tyler Durden. We work jobs that we want, that we hate, to buy things we don't need, to please people we don't want. And then think wow, this is like so cool. This is a paraphrasing of Marcuse.
Yep.
So the reactionary right, the traditionalist right, who is going to save the West from postmodernist neo-Marxist, whatever that means, well done, you are quoting Marcuse. You deserve each other.
Now, why do you think, here's my last question, and I don't know if you have an answer. Why do you think the right wants to associate them with Marx? Is it just a lack of, ability to think, or what is it about the right that forces this cultural Marxist category.
Yeah. So if you go to Wikipedia, cultural Marxism and all that stuff, it's put as a conspiracy theory. And the truth is, it has all the great elements of a conspiracy theory. Here you have a network of people who have a common agenda, who are foreigners in the United States, and they're Jews. What can make a better conspiracy? Now, beyond that starting point, everything else is mostly imagination. First of all, these people were not conspirators, they were out there in the open. It's like saying the Ayn Rand Institute has a conspiracy to spread objectivism. No, you can go in the About page and everyone can see what it is about.
Yeah.
And actually, if you told to Adorno and Horkheimer, you ruin the West, they would be very surprised because they spend all their life thinking that we're fighting a futile battle and we are the voice of one crying in the wilderness, how to put it. And the other thing with the Frankfurt School, particularly Adorno and Horkheimer had very non-radical views on many issues. I'll just give you two examples. Adorno and Horkheimer support Israel in the 1956 war in Suez. Horkheimer, for God's sake, supports the US intervention in Vietnam until early on, at least, because they want to stop China, who he considers they are basically barbarians.
Marcuse doesn't. Yeah.
Marcuse works with the precursor of the CIA.
Yep, he does.
And the Institute, when they go back to West Germany, they get a research collaboration with the Ministry of Defense. And again, Adorno is in some ways also conservative. He defends the institution of the family as a barricade of resistance against totalitarianism. So they are not the figure that people have in mind. Marcuse is the one person who indeed is committed, I want to destroy the free society. But I think the main thing is this element that they were all foreigners and Jews. This made the perfect conspiracy theory. And also most of these people have not read them. So they think they have this agenda to destroy religion and the family and God knows what.
Yep. All right. So that is the Frankfurt School, guys. You can ask questions about that. You can ask questions about anything, of course, on the super chat. I've set a very ambitious goal today because I figured we're going to get the shows about 500, but that's for the movie review. The 1,000 needs to come in beyond and above that. So the goal today is $1,500.
Guys, this is just part of the work we did, and it does not include the Kindle books, and it does not include the essay here. I mean, not to guilt you, but to guilt you.
So that's what you're paying for, the actual work that's going into it. And
plus, you're paying for me to get a second source of internet, not to have the internet problems of last time. So
yep. And the thing is that Nikos enjoys this work, so it's not, this is all selfish. So, but he's got to get paid. There goes.
This would work better with communists. Now there would be
absolutely guilt them into it, and he suffered in order to deliver you this content. Yes. All right. So Starman. Let's jump into the movie review. Thank you, Shazbot, who delivered his second payment on the Starman movie. I don't think I'd seen this movie since 1984. I think I saw it in 1984. I'm not sure, but it was fun to see again. It was very much. It had a 1980s feel to it. I don't know if you have memories of the 80s. I do. Yeah,
that was the main thing that. So two things jumped out for me the first time I saw it before I started processing. One was the 80s vibes, the product placement, the indoor smoking. I was like, we used to be a country. And the second thing was the music,
the hair, both his hair and her hair, the clothes that they're wearing.
The fashion, which makes
even the cinematography. A lot of the way it's filmed, it has a kind of an 80s And a lot of that is benevolent, kind of an 80s kind of benevolent vibe to it, which definitely exists. I was trying to think how they would make that movie today, and it would be very different, partially because the special effects would be like 100 times better. The special effects were pretty lame, but it was the 80s. It would just be filmed, I think, significantly differently. So this is the movie Starman, guys. It was made in 1984, directed by John Carpenter. It has what's his name?
Jeff Bridges and Karen Allen.
Jeff Bridges and Kevin Allen, and they're the main actors. The bunch of supporting actors that are not very familiar.
Shall we give the storyline very quickly for people who haven't watched it?
Do the storyline quickly.
So there's an alien that comes to Earth, and he lands somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and there's a house. There's a woman who has lost her husband very recently. But there's an album, and the alien, through a photo and through a hair,
Piece of hair, yep.
through a piece of hair, he becomes the husband. And of course, he's an alien, and for some reasons, he has to be somewhere. So he takes this woman in a road trip through America, and the woman is with an alien. I mean, he has the form of her husband, but she's still freaked out. This is an alien. But through the road trip, they come closer. And the whole meaning is, how would an alien see us human beings? So the alien is, let's say, an anthropologist of the aliens who came to see us, because back then it was the time where we would send to the space, I think Voyager, it was this mission where we would send messages, come visit us. And at the same time, there's a manhunt. The army wants to catch the alien for nefarious, for not good reasons. So, and obviously there's a romance developing between the woman and Jeff Bridges, the alien. But there's another character in the movie, which is the second thing that came out, which is music. I think music is the real protagonist in that movie. Music is so brilliant. Interestingly, it's not Carpenter, although Carpenter wrote music. Music is by Jack Nietzsche. And it is absolutely haunting. You listen to that music, at that point, it's like, oh, nice music. Next day, this music is stuck in your mind. And it has a special role, I think, it's very few films that the music has such a direct impact on your mindset and how you enter the universe of the movie.
Yeah, so this is it's an interesting movie. It's very enjoyable. So just at the very basic level, I think it's very enjoyable. It's quite benevolent. It's a little. There are definitely elements that you could say, there's silliness involved, right? The plot doesn't quite make sense. The things that happen that you go, no, I mean, that's ridiculous. But I definitely think that the theme, as Nikos suggested, has to do with what kind of a species is man, right? And what would somebody from the outside coming and looking, what would their evaluation be? And there's a couple of lines towards the end of the movie where I think the alien kind of sums it up. And one of the lines is about the world he lives in, where everything's peaceful and everything's nice. Not quite Marcuse's.
More like an Aldous Huxley. Everything is quiet. Everyone is equal, but not much is happening.
Yeah, but not much is happening. And he says, yeah, maybe not enough is happening. He kind of suggests that maybe his experience with Earth has suggested that they've lost something. They've lost a certain passion. They've lost the pursuit of values. They've lost something in this more idealized, a future, that he doesn't quite spell out, but you kind of get a sense of what it
he also spells out something. They miss something that you would also miss. There's no food. Food is automatically taken care of. So he says food and dancing. These things are not there.
And sex. It's clear that there's no sex.
Oh yeah, okay. Oh yeah, because he watches it on TV, and figures it out. Yeah.
Well, and they have sex, and then at some point he's saying what the things he likes about Earth and he says food and da, 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 and those other things. This is just after they've had sex.
That's
And
true.
some other things, and it's clear what he means is the intimacy, the sex itself, and the sex is filmed. The movie's PG, but it's a pretty lengthy scene where they're making out, and it's clear they're having sex. It's fairly lengthy, so this is something they're trying to emphasize, that is happening and that he's enjoying.
And remember that other line. I mean, he doesn't view humans in the way that Ayn Rand would view them. Oh, you're the rational animal. But he says, you are at your very best when things are worst. So this is his, let's say, final take on humanity. That there's something nice, there's something good in you, even when you're not at your best.
Yeah, this is interesting given the fact that he's being hunted. That is, he is exposed to this one woman who's treating him benevolently, and this one scientist. There's a scientist there who's a good guy, but the rest of the official humanity of the representatives of the government are hunting him down, and for no good reason, ready to cut him open. It's in that sense, it presents a very malevolent view of government, which is not too bad from our perspective. But there's enough of the good. He sees the essence, he sees the goodness, and I think it's very much a reminder of the things that are enjoyable in life, the things that are good in life, the things that can be appreciated, that should be appreciated in life, in spite of the sorrows and the problems and the challenges.
So if you want people a nostalgic dive to the 80s, road trips, country roads, watch the movie. It will give you 2 nice hours, and it will leave an aftertaste that is a sweet aftertaste. But just make sure you have this, how it's called, suspension of disbelief, because with today's standards, you'll find it a bit.
Yeah, and it's not a great movie. There are lots of things that are missing to make it a great movie, but it's definitely a fun movie, and it's definitely enjoyable and worth watching. There's also a little bit of just because we've just talked about the Frankfurt School, there's a little Plato there, right? Because, God, I'm going to give away a spoiler. But when he talks about the baby, he talks about the baby having knowledge, that the baby will be born with knowledge. He will know stuff. He will know everything the father knows. And there's a little bit of that kind of, you're born with knowledge and now you just have to recollect it in there, which epistemologically was screwed up, but doesn't really hurt the basic of the movie.
Well, you have to be the chairman of the board of the Ayn Rand Institute to get so deep philosophical knowledge. I didn't get it.
He literally gives her this little ball and she says, what would I do with this? And he says, the baby will know. The movie literally almost.
I remember the scene, but I didn't make the connection. Yeah.
Because he told her before that the baby will know everything he knows. So
Plato is everywhere.
I have a long experience in philosophically taking apart movies. So this is not.
But this was fun. So first of all, a huge thank you to Sosbot and encouraging other people to. Now, personally, I would do it for less money, but I'm not the boss here, so.
It's $500 for a movie, so if we're both gonna do it, it's pricey. You gotta shoot high in order to get to where you need to be. So we're shooting high. So and look, we haven't.
Wait, so if the movie is 500 each, how much would be a book?
A book depends on the length, but it would be substantial. But if you guys want us to review a book, sponsor a show on the Yaron Book Show is $1,000. So again, I think 1,000 would make sense. We could do if you have a topic, by the way, guys, that you would like Nikos and I to delve into, intellectual history, anything related to kind of the intersection of ideas and history, we're definitely up for that. So send a, so a sponsorship is $1,000. And what else did I want to say? Yeah, if you want, it would be interesting if any of you want to ask us about music, because I think here we might, Nikos and I might not have the same taste in music. So
Yeah.
yeah. Go
When
ahead, Nikos.
people ask about music, I will react the same way you react when people talk about Arsenal and their defensive
Yeah,
tactic.
exactly. No, but you have opinions about music.
And my opinions about music are at the level of
Of my
Led
opinions about
Zeppelin is the
Arsenal.
best rock music. That's it.
All right. Well, that's okay. Rock music is music. So, we can. You can also ask. So, other than movies and books, what aesthetics? Anything you would like them to ask you about?
Sports, anything about history of sports,
There you go.
basketball, football.
All right. All right. So I can participate a little bit in basketball, a little bit, particularly if it's related to the Celtics, and football. Not really.
Well,
Not really.
tomorrow is the 1st of June, is the month of where the World Cup starts. So
I do watch the World Cup.
good.
So it's the only football I watch on a regular basis is the World Cup, and I do know that Paris won last night, not so much because I watched the game or anything like that, but because I was following the riots that happened after the game. They basically burned down Paris yesterday, or tried to burn down Paris yesterday,
Well,
because they won, not because they lost. Because they
yeah,
won.
exactly. That doesn't tell you anything about the result. They would riot if they lost. They
That's
would
true.
riot if they won.
That's true. I think the article that I read actually mentioned that fact, that it didn't really matter. That some storekeepers in Paris had prepared their stores because they knew there would be riots no matter what would happen.
Yeah, it's actually sad. It's not funny because
No, it's
there are
not.
background reasons for why Paris and all that, but that's for another show.
Yes. All right. So sports is another issue, but we've got a lot of questions. So we're going to jump into our Q&A. And as always, we do it from the people who put the most money in, and then we go backwards, right? And okay, let me also thank the sticker people. Sticker people are important. So Barry, thank you. Kate Dempter, thank you. John, thank you. Bonnie, thank you. And this is great because the stickers, and this is the beauty of stickers, vary from $1, literally $1, to $100. So it's
Wow.
terrific. Mike, thank you. Stephen Hopper, thank you. Let's see, Roland, Swiss franc. I always like Swiss franc. When the Swiss franc is going up, that's always good. Kay Dempter again, I think. Let's see, what do we? Catherine from Europe, thank you. And I'm pretty sure Wes did was it just a question? I guess Wes did $200 questions. All right.
Wow.
Cool.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Wes.
Wes. So Wes first did, this is why I thought it was a sticker. He said, I love these shows. These guys sound like real life TUIs. I think you mean the Frankfurt School, not me and Nikos. So I appreciate that. Thanks, Wes. And then Wes has a question. Well, maybe also a comment. These discussions are great. It's amazing how these radical ideas spread and how accepted by average person. Many people who spout diluted versions of this nonsense would be horrified if they read the actual sources.
Yeah. Think about it this way. There would be no Fight Club, which by the way is one of my favorite movies, but for other reasons. There would be no Fight Club without the Frankfurt School. If anyone tells you, oh, your ideas are theoretical, just tell them this. No Marcuse, no Fight Club.
So here's a real question. I mean, that I think always is challenging for us is when you think of when you read this stuff and you read a rational analysis of it, like Walsh's or kind of what we've discussed today, it sounds so stupid. And as we said, it's so mystical in a sense that ultimately their epistemology is a rejection of reason and a rejection of reality. They reject metaphysically reality. So it's pure mysticism. It's pure primacy of consciousness. It's the fantasy. They make stuff up, whatever your subconscious is. Why is this so, I mean, why are they so influential? Why is this so dominant in the bastions of academia, right? In the places of learning and thought?
For two reasons. The obvious superficial level is appeal to authority. When people, I mean, do you know how many people I've had who've told me that Heidegger is the greatest philosopher of the 20th century? And then I ask them, can you tell me, A, what did this guy say? B, why is he the greatest? And they have zero idea, not even the idea of the level of the first paragraph of Wikipedia. So that's the one thing. The other thing is that these people go deeper and give some intellectual respectfulness to notions that are bromides. Consumerism makes us stupid. Science and art are the tools of the powerful. Like the things that you hear in Greece, we say in the coffee place, now get the element and the depth of respectability. So these are two reasons that, without thinking it very deeply, come as answers. They give intellectual dressing to bromides that are easy to digest and to false premises that people anyway have.
Yeah, and I'm going to add a third, which I think is they're capitalizing on Christianity. They're capitalizing on religion. So they're basically intellectualizing the mysticism of religion. I don't think you could get away with this crap in a era that had gone beyond religion, right? Maybe even in ancient Greece. Although, Plato maybe comes close sometimes, but I don't think it's this. I don't think it's quite this bad. And particularly, and Plato doesn't have the experience of the last 2,000 years of technology and science and all that. So it's not an accident that some of this sounds like the Garden of Eden, and that some of Freud sounds like stuff you read in Cain and Abel and all. I mean, Jordan Peterson has made a whole career almost on taking stories from Christianity and giving them a modern voice, because I think that a lot of this is just an intellectualizing, a secularization, a pseudo-intellectual presentation of mystical ideas coming out of religious tradition. You couldn't do this if religion didn't have such a strong stronghold on culture and on our world.
Exactly. And again, for a deeper dive on the link between religion and the Frankfurt School, check out Nathaniel Branden's essay on alienation in Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal.
Yeah, and I want to second that. I did a whole show on that essay years ago, maybe before COVID. I did it when I was living in California still. So I did it from California. A whole show on that essay, because I think that's an incredibly important, powerful essay. And, his point about what really causes people's alienation, which is kind of the mixed economy, these confusing ideas, they call, these crazy ideas that people are hearing and people are internalizing, that causes them to be alienated, because it causes them to be alienated from reality. It causes them to be alienated from their own self-interest. It causes them to be alienated from what really is leading for a good life. That's towards the end of the essay. That is so powerful. So yeah, that is also my favorite by far, Nathaniel Branden essay. And I think he captures some. And when I did it, I did that because to me, it explains so much of the Trump phenomena in Trump version 1. Think about that essay in the context of Trump, the people who love Trump, the people who follow Trump, and the supposed alienation that they feel, and what they alienated by, and what they're looking for. So that was the context in which I did the show.
Good. I found the soundtrack for tomorrow's workout. I'll find that episode.
Yeah, it was a fun episode. All right, let's see. Not your average algorithm. Let's see. $50. Thank you, whoever not your average algorithm is. Not long ago, when someone was accused of racism and anti-Semitism, they would rigorously deny the accusation. Now, no one cares. Being a racial bigot is a normalized part of podcasting culture. Is the next phase some kind of ethnic cleansing?
Who is going to do the ethnic cleansing? So I don't think there's going to be ethnic cleansing, but what you say is correct. So we were in a situation where racism had lost all its gravitas and had lost all its weight as an accusation because it was thrown to anyone who was slightly to the left of, I don't know, Angela Davis, to the right of Angela Davis. But the problem is that there is such a thing as racism, and there is such a thing as anti-Semitism, and it began as something which was transgressive on Twitter. Let's say, let's put the boundaries, and now it's become this banal, disgusting, which it's not fun, it's not transgressive, and it's just disgusting as it deserves to be. So we are where we would be.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I agree. I don't think there's anybody to do the ethnic cleansing. Who is going to go out there into the streets and round up the Jews? I mean, you don't see that as a political agenda outside of, really crazy, crazy nutcases. We get a false vision of the world when we live online. Most Americans are not racist or anti-Semites. Most Europeans are not racist and anti-Semites. There's more of it than there should be. There's more of it than a good culture would have. And these anti-Israel demonstrations all over the world illustrate that. But even that's a minority of people. That's not a majority of those cultures. So yes, there's going to be more violence against Jews. No question about that. If you're Jewish and you live in the UK particularly, but in Europe more generally, beware. Or even if you live in New York, in LA, beware. Racism, will there be shootings of some white crazy shoot up blacks or some black guy shoot up white? Yeah, there's going to be more of that. But there's not going to be a political driven ethnic cleansing program anytime soon. Now, I don't know what happens in 20 years. If things keep getting worse, who knows? But I predicted ethnic cleansing in Europe, but to Muslims. So that was my prediction. We'll see if that happens, sometime in the next 30 years. But I really don't see it happening anytime soon. Although what's going on online is scary and super unpleasant. And again, if you live in certain places and you're obviously Jewish, be careful. Be careful. I mean, it changes behavior. Like I'm hesitant to speak Hebrew in Europe now.
Oh, 100%. When I was traveling with Jonathan in Uber, first of all, at some point we stopped taking Uber. We preferred the traditional taxis. But in Uber, he would not speak Hebrew to his family. He would speak in English.
Yeah.
And for me, that was a major red pill moment, a major moment of realization. Oh my God, I'm seeing it in front of me and I understand it. It wasn't hysterical.
Yep. Yeah, and it's something I've noticed because I used to speak Hebrew in Uber, right? So I've lived through the transition of being hesitant about it. And
I remember pre-October 7th, I remember hearing you speaking Hebrew in an Uber in Amsterdam.
Yep.
In Amsterdam today, I'm not even sure if I would take an Uber anyway.
Yeah. All right. Molten Splendor. Many advocates of socialism believe that they should be taken care of by the state. Would you connect someone that wants to be taken care of and not be producer, worker, or laborer as an example of the divine right of stagnation, or just simply entitled?
Why is it one or the other? You have a divine right of stagnation because you're entitled, and you are entitled because you have this passive mentality that is in the essay, which also is a very good one.
The divine right of stagnation, yes.
Yeah. It's yeah.
It's in the virtue of selfishness.
I'm not sure. I was checking it earlier, but for some reason now I don't remember
No,
where
I don't
it
think
is.
it's there. Maybe in philosophy who needs it.
Probably in philosophy who needs it.
But yeah,
it's
I think it all comes from the same source, from the same resentment of both the entitlement mentality and the divine right, which are related, and they have, you have both of them, but they come from this notion of there's something bad about work. There's a certain anger at reality. Remember, if you're against work, you're against reality. You're against the nature of the world. The nature of the world is such, and this is, remember, what Christianity considers the fall. The nature of the world is such that human beings, like every other animal out there, has to act in order to survive. We have to do stuff in order to survive biologically, just like any other animal, just like any other living being. You have to pursue values. So if you're against work, you're against existence. You're against reality. You're against everything in the world. And this is kind of this is why I understand why people like that become nihilists. And I don't think that they become nihilists because they hate reality, they hate the world, they hate existence, because existence demands that they actually go pursue work. And you can imagine that somebody who takes Marcuse seriously is likely to become a nihilist in the end, because where do you go from that? If that the outcome you're not going to achieve, you're not going to achieve that utopia where you can just hang around and have sex all day and not have to work, right? Although what's interesting is right now, the people in the AI community that are resurrecting this idea with the idea that AI and the robots are going to do all the work, that we'll be able to lounge around and do nothing and be able to live in this Marcusian or Marxist, post whatever utopian world, and that the robots will feed us and the robots will do everything for us, and we'll be able to survive that way. It's literally, I think there are really influential people within the AI community who believe this is where we're heading.
And it's not miles away from the UBI discussion, which was big also among libertarians. And now I don't remember where in the objectivist literature I found it. Maybe it was in Branden's essay. By the way, the divine right of stagnation is in the virtue of selfishness. Okay. He says that there are defenders of capitalism who espouse some of these ideas, that you should, that scarcity is a natural condition, and a condition of capitalism, and economics start from scarcity. So you start from the same premises as the Marcusians, and you think you're going to defend capitalism.
Every standard economic treatise, including Austrian economists, start with the idea of scarcity. So Thomas Sowell, in his Introduction to Economics, first line, I think, something about scarcity. There's a well-known Austrian economist who wrote a book, an Introduction to Economics, that I was all excited about reading. First paragraph starts with scarcity. So they all start with scarcity. So it is, when I say to economists, no, economics is not about scarcity, they really get upset. They don't understand how one can think that way. So, but yeah, Bold and Spend, it's absolutely, it's the same thing. It is this, it's both, there's a psychological element to it. At some point in Walsh's essay, he quotes Marcuse, I think, as saying something like, what we really want is to sleep. Right? Right? Life is driving us towards sleep. That is the ideal. The ideal is to sleep. And so the idea is idleness. The ideal is idleness. It's not to do anything. And being entitled, being divine right of stagnation, all these things are all the same. They're all the resentment of the world. They're all the resentment of the requirements of a living being to maintain its survival.
And remember how Ayn Rand captures it in Atlas Shrugged. It says something like, at the end of this road is the figure of this fat, like Indian mystical Raj figure, who is kind of on this half life. Basically, it's death at the end of the day. This is almost like a dress rehearsal for death.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and again, it will also say, he talks about the seeking nirvana.
Nirvana,
And
yeah, yeah.
nirvana, which is the Buddhist idea, and Marcuse, the ideal is this sleep, nirvana, idleness, but it's the opposite of Rand, right? It's the opposite of productiveness. It's the opposite of rationality. It's the opposite of taking responsibility for your own life and making something of your life. And indeed, a lot of the critique, the Frankfurt School, is the critique of this hero that produces and creates and changes the world. That to them is the villain. So this is even more the opposite of Rand than Marx is.
Of course, 100%. And there's no surprise if you're a Walter Benjamin who you think it is demeaning to make your own coffee.
Yeah.
Imagine how you feel vis-a-vis the Randian hero. It's embarrassing. It puts this mirror in front of you, and you should be very scared of what you see there.
Yep.
Scared for where your life is going. It's destructive, first of all, not for the welfare system which is gonna feed you while you're a parasite. It's first of all destructive to you. It destroys your life, your self-esteem, everything.
Yep. All right, not your average algorithm. Candace Owen and Anna Kasparian started doing podcasts together discussing the Jewish question.
Of course.
It seems what can unite the left and the right is some form of obsessive conspiratorial Jew hatred. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, as I said in my speech in Israel, which was my favorite ever live talk and the last live talk I've done, it's available in my channel to view it because I elaborate on that. Anti-Israeli thing is the focal point where the worst people meet.
Yep.
It's like the honey which attracts, actually I wasn't having the honey in mind, that attracts flies and bees. This is what anti-Israel is. And back then I predicted that till now it attracts the same people, the worst people from each side.
Yeah.
Soon I predicted it will start bringing people from different sides. And this is exactly what happens. Anna Kasparian is supposedly from the left, Candace Owen supposedly from the right, but it doesn't matter. If you're a moral degenerate, anti-Israel is the meeting point and everyone is welcome in that meeting point.
And of course, doing a show on the Jewish question, which was Karl Marx's first published essay, was titled On the Jewish Question. And it was during an era in Germany, during a period in Germany, where a lot of different intellectuals were writing essays on the Jewish question, because there was a period in Germany where they were trying to figure out, Germany was trying to figure out what to do with the Jews. Would they integrate them into their society, or would they keep them in the ghetto? And it's my favorite essay by Marx, because I think everything you need to know about Marx is in that essay. It's brutal. It's naked in that sense. He doesn't hold back. He connects capitalism with selfishness in a way that he doesn't in later on. Here it's just laid out right in front of you. And of course, the connection between capitalism and selfishness is the Jew, who is selfish and a capitalist. And so that if you're going to read one thing by Marx, that's what I would read.
And the anti-Semitism is so shocking that most people fail to see what is even worse in the essay. What is even worse is that the real enemy of Marx in that essay is not the Jew, it's each one of you. Yes. It's every person pursuing their own interest. This is what turns Marx crazy about capitalism. And notice something else. This is a time where Marx hasn't discovered surplus value or any of these things. He has already decided that capitalism allows you living for yourself, and therefore capitalism is bad. Everything else, the Paris manuscripts, the theory of exploitation, the manifesto, all these come later. Marx has already everything else is a rationalization. Marx has decided, I don't want people to live life for themselves, and people who do that are so bad as the ultimate evil for him, which is the selfish Jew.
Yep. Yes, absolutely. And this is why you can't defend capitalism unless you're defending individualism, unless you're defending a morality of individualism. And that's the mistake all the free marketers make, is that they won't go there.
And Marx saw what Adam Smith had not seen and what
Yep.
still libertarians don't see, that capitalism equals selfishness. And well done to him, right?
Yeah.
This shows that he was a perspective, he could
Perceptive.
see things.
Perceptive.
Perceptive.
Perceptive. Yeah. All right. This is James. Does Trump have a vision of what he wants for the next 2 years, or is it random narcissistic marketing?
The latter.
Yeah, I don't think you could put vision and Trump in the same sentence. No, he has no vision of what he wants. He wants the narcissistic. He wants to be great. He wants pyramids to be built with his name on them. And the thing that upset him more than the war and more than anything is that a judge dared to force them taking Trump's name off of the Lincoln Center, and keep JFK's name and take his name off. And he did a whole missive on his Truth Social on this, because it's all about narcissism.
Just one very quick challenge to any one of our viewers who is still pro-Trump. Be very honest, viewer. Go to Trump's Truth Social and just check the post from the last 24 hours and tell me honestly, if this was your uncle, what would be your evaluation? How concerned would you be that there's something wrong with this guy? He cannot be posting every 20 minutes like shit posts and memes portraying himself as this. Like, if you saw your uncle doing this, you would be concerned. And yet you see the president of the United States during a war, supposedly doing this, and you're not concerned.
Yep, absolutely. Tom, just wanted to give a shout out to you too. Greetings from Austin, Texas. Thank you, Tom. Really appreciate
Greetings
that.
from Austin. Greetings to Austin.
To Austin. Liam, how would you compare Trump to Woodrow Wilson? I think Wilson is worse because he's more intellectual. Oh, no question. Wilson is much more intellectual. Wilson is an ideologue. He is a progressive. He has an agenda. He knows what he wants to do. In that sense, Wilson is worse in the sense that he knows what he wants to do and he gets it done. And he institutes programs that have survived to this day that are significant changes. The difference is this. Trump is in a sense a nihilist. He's a destructive force. He's not building anything. He's not creating anything. He's not passing important laws or anything like that. The main impact that he has is the demolition, right? We stop respecting the courts. We hate immigrants. We now distrust trade. People who used to be free traders not that long ago, now they hate trade. He has this impact on people, changes the way people are thinking and trust and believe in the institutions. The institutions in America will never be the same post-Trump. They will never be the same post-Trump. So Wilson, you can, and this is the thing, you can argue against a Wilson. You can debate a Wilson. You can debate the progressive movement, and you might lose, you might win, but you could debate them. There's no debating Trump because there's no there. There's just his momentary whims, and that's all there is.
You said it all.
All right, Hopper. Do most people have a cynical or malevolent universe premise? That's why they can't resonate with Rand's heroes or the vision she presents of a benevolent universe and win-win relationships.
Or at some level, they know they could be more like these heroes, but it's too difficult, so they avoid the responsibility. So it's easier to say, all this is childish or whatever.
I think that's right. I mean, there are a lot of different psychologies that lead people to reject Rand. So I don't think you can say they're all cynical or they're all malevolent. There are a lot of them are like, I would have to give up my Christianity for this. Can't do that. And why do they say can't do that? Because it's just inculcated into them. It's family. Or they're just conventional. They're just lazy. They're cowards. A lot of them are just cowards. So there are lots of reasons why somebody would not respond positively to Rand. I think malevolence and cynicism, certainly the end cynicism is probably at an all-time high today. I mean, we live in a very cynical culture, but don't forget the impact of mysticism and the impact of cowardness and the impact of just social pressure and conformity and lots of different psychological reasons. Arthur, when you have money, you don't really have problems. Most of the problems are just created by you. I don't get that, right? I really don't get that. So does money solve your, I don't know, inability to find a girlfriend? I mean, maybe some, but not the kind of woman you want necessarily, right? It's money doesn't solve, I don't know, the conflict you have with your best friend right now. You're disagreeing about something and you're fighting. Is money the solution to that? I mean,
even with health, which money can buy a better health up to a point. Even like
up to a point.
think of the life of Steve Jobs. Would you say
Yeah.
Steve Jobs had no problems? Would you say
Yeah.
Michael Jordan had no problems?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't think that's true. I think I don't think the only problem in life is not having enough money, which is what what your question suggests. And what you'll find is that you quickly adjust to the amount of money you have. So it's always the case you don't have enough money. Almost always. I mean, I think you can certainly reach a certain place where that's not true. But that's a very high number, at least in my life. It's a very high number, that number where, yeah, money is no longer something I would strive for. So I remember.
We're definitely not there. So people send super chats.
No, you're definitely not there. Yeah, I remember literally having conversations with friends I don't know, 30 years ago, saying, okay, if I had X amount, if my income was X, I'd be done. I mean, I'd be done. There'd be nothing more. And then I got there and it was like, no, I really need 2X. And, and when you get to 2X, it's 4X. And now I have a number, partially because I'm, arguably, towards the end. But so I have a number that I think would be it. I'm not there quite yet. But money is not. It doesn't function that way, and it's certainly not the only source of challenges or problems or troubles at all. The reality is there's constantly points of challenges that occur, and some of them relate to money, and some of them don't. Many of them don't. Michael, do you think the average work week will drop to 30 hours or less in your lifetime due to AI and automation? I mean, I do think that the average work hour will drop. It's been dropping for a century now, and I think it probably will continue. I don't know what the optimal level will be. There will still be people working as they are today, 70, 80, 90 hours a week. So averages are very deceiving. But yeah, I think for many people, let's say where work is not that interesting, the amount of hours they will need to work in order to make a good living will be lower. How much lower, I don't know.
But one more thing, the pioneers in every area will always work more because they will find new angles. I mean,
Yes.
think for example, the cutting edge that advanced analytics have brought to football or basketball. But you cannot say that coaches work less. They can find information faster, but this information opens new doors.
Yep.
So now you can go even further and get more cutting edge on something that you didn't even know existed 3 years ago, not to say 30 years ago.
In my view, the biggest impact AI will have on work is it'll make it more fun. It'll make it more interesting. So it will replace drudgery. I mean, think about programming. Programming is fun, but if you've programmed for 5 years, okay, so much for new challenges. And, writing code line by line is less fun. Now, Claude does the coding, and you manage Claude. And the managing Claude makes you more strategic. It makes it more interesting. And actually, I've heard people who are saying that they're writing 5 different programs at the same time, right? They're managing Claude 1 and Claude 2 and Claude 3, each one working on a different project. That brings new challenges. It doesn't mean you're working less. It means your productivity is 5x, and you're probably making more money, and you're having more fun because you're working at a much higher level of conceptualization of what we're good at as human beings, which is thinking. So it'll take a lot of the drudgery out of work. I am having fun with AI these days. I was telling my wife yesterday how excited I was about AI. So I'm not going to say why, because hopefully there'll be a new project that I reveal in the next few weeks. But it's just there's some just playing around with it, having it do different things. It's so interesting. It's so interesting what it comes back with. I do a lot of write me a speech in Yaron Brook's voice on this topic, and it's brilliant. It's
No,
really good.
this takes away the.
It's not going to write my speeches for me,
Oh,
but
okay.
I find the responses so interesting, what it chooses to come back at me, and that fuels more thinking for me. So that then I think, okay, what do I have to add on this, right? But no, I'm not going to have you on Brooks a what do you call it, a three-dimensional hologram.
Hologram.
I'm not going to have a hologram of you on speaking at conferences. It's still going to be me.
Also,
But
the
I'm
true
going to
fans
enjoy
know
the
that you don't.
process
The
of
true
preparing the
fans.
talk. What's that?
The true fans know that you don't write your talks in advance, so AI cannot write your talks anyway.
That is true. That is true. But the talks that it writes are pretty good, pretty good. Which is interesting how it does that. I'm fascinated by the whole phenomenon. All right, Molten Splendor says, great work, guys. I'm especially impressed by the research and work that Nikos has put into these presentations. Absolutely.
It's literally my job, but thanks.
These episodes care something a real treat. Thank you, Molten Splendor. Absolutely. And I mean, the nice thing is that when you do this kind of research that Nikos is doing, he's going to be able to use it on multiple different products, right? Multiple different podcasts, lectures, talks, classes he teaches. So, I mean, deep research like this bears lots and lots of fruit. And this is a job. This is what intellectuals do.
And we want also this to be evergreen, to be a legacy, to be out there forever, potentially.
Yeah. I mean, one thing we could do is ask AI to summarize the discussion we had today and see what it comes back with.
Yeah, but people watch the whole discussion. Don't ask AI to summarize it.
Well, yeah, true. Yes, there's a lot more fun in actually watching us. Cook, really enjoyed these shows. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Cook.
Hi, Kirk.
And thanks again, gentlemen. Thank you, Anne. And I owe you an email. I'm going to get to it. James, there's a bill going through Congress that would eliminate capital gains taxes on all home sales. Trump seems eager to sign it. Is it likely to pass? I doubt it that it would pass, but maybe. I'm very, very much against capital gains taxes. So that it's one of the taxes that I'm most against. So I'm all for it going away. In California, well, no, no, it's not California. It doesn't really affect many people. So let me just say, as far as I remember, the first $500,000 is free of capital gains taxes anyway. So you would have to make on the sale of your home more than $500,000 before you started, not paying capital gains. So it doesn't affect most people. Most people don't have, unless you live in California, more than $500,000 gain on your home. So it seems like a bill that could pass because it won't have that big of effect on anybody. And the people who will have an effect on are relatively well off.
Judge a man by the size of his problems. Meanwhile, I'm having 2-hour discussions with my accountant what to do with a $200 donation on Stripe. Weeks after weeks after weeks. What type of $200?
Greek tax law, guys. Greek tax law. Yep. All right. Don't move to Greece. Why do you think somebody like James Lindsay, who wrote some insightful stuff about critical theory, went so far off track and became a nut who calls everything Marxism?
First of all, wait a minute. First of all, he's done very, very good job in presenting these views. Now, do I agree with his intellectual conclusions? 50-50. 50% he's spot on, 50% not. But at least he's trying to do serious intellectual work.
Yeah,
And very importantly, he also does it against the woke right. He's doing God's work there. Not many people who were on the, let's say, MAGA train, and he still sees himself as MAGA, but this doesn't take away that he did very good work in Cynical Theories, the book. Very good work. He has many long essays on critical theory. Again, not exactly intellectual of my taste, but he tries to do serious work, and most importantly, he does this also for the right. So he has my respect, irrespective of any disagreements.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see more people do the kind of work that he does, and even if we end up disagreeing, at least the, this is an intellectual disagreement. It's something that can be discussed, debated, and it's, I wouldn't call him a nut in spite of his attraction to MAGA.
And he does something very rare. He actually reads the stuff. So when he criticizes Marcuse, and he's very honest. He said, for example, I haven't read One-Dimensional Man. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about the essays that I've read. I respect that.
Yep. And he does a lot of work. That is, he does seminars and courses and write books and so he's very intellectual active, which I respect. Christian, did you ever hear of so-called anti-Germans? They are pro-Israel leftists coming out of the Frankfurt School. Anti-imperialists versus anti-Germans was a hot fight between leftists 20 years ago.
So many from the Frankfurt School were pro-Israel again, and they were very traumatized from the Holocaust, so they had a very sensitive spot. They were not self-hating Jews, or what we call today self-hating Jews. I don't know when this phrase came about, but they were not like that. At the same time, anyway, now it goes to a different discussion, but I haven't heard about that particular group of people, so I cannot help our dear viewer, but thanks for the question and the contribution.
Yeah, anti-Germans. We'll have to look it up. I've never heard that. What we saw yesterday night in Paris was a reminder that post-colonial studies wreak havoc in the West. That garbage trickles down to football hooligans who only wait for any excuse to loot and riot.
I don't think, by the way, they were football hooligans. If you ask them to name the starting lineup of Paris Saint-Germain, I doubt they could name anyone. I think it was just nihilistic rioting. If you're happy that your team won, you don't go out looting.
So the phenomenon of football hooligans is not a looting phenomena?
It is, but yesterday they were not football hooligans. I think they were ethnic hooligans, not football hooligans.
I think they were flying Palestinian flags and stuff like that. All right.
First of all, just guys, imagine your team has won a second consecutive Champions League, and you go out and look. No, you try to absorb every moment. You watch the press conference. You don't go out looting. This already shows me they don't care about football. If you're a real one, you know what I mean, guys. When something very important happens with sports, you want to absorb it. You don't want to go to a carnival.
You go partying, not looting. So in Israel, going back to the history of basketball, in Israel twice there was a sporting event where literally the entire country went out into the streets, and there was dancing. There was music and dancing all night. One was both were basketball. One was Maccabi Tel Aviv beating CSKA Moscow for the European Championship in 1970 something. Maybe you know when that happened.
Well, it happened first of all more recently in 2014, but
I don't think there was dancing in the streets in 2014, but in the 70s, this is in the 70s, and then the Israeli national team I think beat the USSR at some basketball, also at a European thing, and there was literally massive dancing in the streets.
It was probably the time of Goran Bergovic, who was the first great Israeli player I remember.
Yes, Berkovic was definitely in both teams. I can, if I really thought about it, I could probably name the starting five for Maccabi Tel Aviv.
Oh,
O.C. Perry was the nominal American, the black guy, tall guy who literally loved Israel so much that he got circumcised and converted to Judaism so he could stay in Israel and play for the national team. And getting circumcised is not pleasant at that age. And Bilkovich was
wait,
there.
sorry, because
Yep.
so if at any point life becomes unbearable in the Balkans and I have to go to Israel to get nationality or whatever, do you have to?
I think you have to convert to Judaism, and to convert to Judaism, you have to have. Yep.
Seriously, like someone's gonna check?
Um, they have to get some diploma from the rabbinical
Oh.
whatever.
God. Okay, there goes my plan B.
Got to look for a plan C. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how long you could live in Israel without being a citizen, but yeah, you don't want to have to convert to Judaism.
Okay.
Not a good idea. All right, Nikos, as both our teams are not qualified, who are you rooting for in the World Cup? He says, Christian says, I am for Netherlands.
I'm with the team I support in every World Cup since 1990. Obviously, Argentina. One more reason why, because Messi is playing there. I supported Argentina before Messi for leftist reasons when I liked Maradona. Now I like them for pure football reasons. So every big tournament, it's always Argentina.
All right.
I can tell you probably the starting lineup of every Argentina team from 94 till today. Although the first one I watched was 1990, but I can remember only Maradona, Canija, and Goicoechea.
All right. So you didn't ask me my opinion, but the last Netherlands teams I supported were the teams where Johan Cruyff played. That was my favorite team in the 1970s. When I thought Cruyff was just a genius. I mean, I thought he was an amazing player.
Two consecutive World Cup finals. In both, I think they go ahead and yet they lose.
I know.
The Queen without a crown. Although Cruyff played only in
In the first
74,
one.
he didn't
Yeah,
play
yeah.
in 78.
That's right. That's right. And so I usually support Brazil, but I have no idea if they have any chance.
They will have a good team. I never supported Brazil. We should do a whole show on World Cups. Although my biggest World Cup love was Roberto Baggio from 94. I still consider him my biggest football crush ever. And this will, because always your favorite World Cup is the first World Cup where you can properly watch and understand. So for me, it was Roberto Baggio.
So the first World Cup I could properly watch and understand was 74. And I think the first World Cup I have a memory of was Mexico City, 1970. Pelé in the finals. So, and there's actually, I think on Netflix, there's like not a documentary. There's like a drama. The entire thing, it's like 5 episodes, a series, focused on Brazil's 1970 team.
Many claim the best team that ever.
But they have a lot of drama around the coach. The coach was fired just as the World Cup began, and Pelé rebelled, and they didn't do well in the opening round, and so anyway, that's on my to watch list. That should be a lot of fun. But that was I'm also an England fan, and that goes back to Bobby Charlton, which is 1960s.
Last World Cup I was supporting England was 2002 against Brazil, but Brazil won.
Yep. Yeah, England never wins. All right, for a long time, since 66, right? I know a little bit about football. Just
So
enough
see,
to be.
I think we can do a World Cup episode if someone really wants it. Although no one's gonna watch it from the American audience.
I don't think so. Basketball, maybe we have a better shot.
Well, the finals are beginning in a few days, so yeah.
Yes. Who won yesterday?
The Spurs.
Oh, wow. Okay. You
Well,
kind of
if
predict.
only someone told you 2 episodes ago that 7 out of the 10 next NBA leagues are going to be won by the Spurs.
Yeah, somebody did tell me that. So they beat the Knicks? I think they beat the Knicks.
Yeah, they'll beat the
Yeah,
Knicks. Yeah,
they beat
probably.
the Knicks. Yep.
Although we are with the Knicks, perhaps.
Why are we with the Knicks?
Yeah, it's a cultural event for the United States. The Knicks, Boston Guard, it's these things that are a big thing. Like whenever the Celtics or the Knicks or the Lakers go to the final, it's a cultural event. It
This is
means
why San Antonio needs to win. It's the new, the vibrant, the exciting, the West. The only team in the East that has to win are the Celtics. Everybody else in the East should lose whenever they reach the finals. All right, Neo. I also believe that most things will be produced by robots in the future. What foundational objectivist philosophical concept would have to change or added in this new science fiction world?
none.
None. I don't think any foundational objectivist philosophical concept. I mean, certainly we'll have to think about a lot of things differently because the world will be different, and certainly we'll have to reconceive certain ideas in economics, I'm sure. But I don't think of any foundational philosophical issue that AI changes unless, here's an idea, right? What if we can actually create artificial life? That is, what if we can imbue a robot? And I think it would have to be with biological material. But imagine if we can imbue a robot with consciousness. Then I think you have to start thinking about, okay, how do rights apply to this? Is it fully rights, worthy? Call it that way. I mean, some thinking would have to be done. So, and I think even now, I think objectivism needs to do the thinking about, okay, why are we so sure that AI cannot be conscious? And what is it about consciousness that we hold that makes it clear that AI? I think objectivism needs to come up with some written content about this stuff. So this is, I think, a frontier issue that objectivism needs to talk about.
But I always do it with a horizon towards life. And I'm saying this because you know how many objectives I heard telling me, oh, I wouldn't want to upload my consciousness to a robot because Ayn Rand said an indestructible robot cannot have values.
No, nobody's ever told you that. No ways.
Are you kidding me? I've heard it at least for 3-4 different people.
Really?
Yeah. I have often the discussions about, quote, transhumanism. This is the standard answer I get.
God, I'm glad. Let me say, I'm glad I've never heard that one.
You haven't heard that one. Have you ever done an episode on transhumanism?
No, but I've mentioned transhumanism. I mentioned that I think that that's the future.
That's cool.
I believe that I don't think you can upload your consciousness into a robot, but I think you can implant a robot into your brain. There's no reason why we can't enhance our muscles and our ability to do stuff and hack our genetics and do all kinds of things. So depending on what you mean exactly by transhumanism, I definitely think we can improve the human brain and our human bodies to make them better than they are, whether through electronic means or through biological means. So,
and speaking about cynicism, how sad that more people are not excited about that.
I'm thrilled. I'm super excited. And if I thought it was possible to upload my consciousness to a computer or to a robot, I would do it in a second. I mean, I wouldn't hesitate.
I'm very glad to hear that.
Why would I not? I mean, immortal robot. First of all, there is no such thing as an immortal robot because all robots in reality can die, right? You can unplug them, you can chop their head, you can destroy their electronics. There's literally, I mean, it's a fictitious example she makes up to make a point. The point is not don't upload your consciousness. The point is that you have to have the possibility of non-existent in order for values to mean anything. and the possibility of non-existent exists for a robot. So, so it's crazy, that idea. One of my favorite books when I was young. I don't know what I think of it if I read it now. You said you hadn't read Robert Heinlein. Yeah. So Time Enough for Love is this amazing book about a guy named Lazarus who basically lives forever. And he's every 100 years or 90 years, he goes to rejuvenation clinic. And because of his particular DNA, he can make himself look young, but everything is still working. So he's still functioning. He can be shot, he can be killed, but he won't die of natural causes, right? And the technology is such that he can always look young. And I love the book because so he has relationships with people. For example, he has a relationship with women, and they get old. So part of the almost tragedies in the book is how he deals with that, how they deal with it. It's a science fiction book, so it's adventure, but it's also a very personal book with a lot of these kind of issues. So Time Enough for Love is a book again, I haven't read it in 30 years, so it's hard to recommend. But when I read it in my 20s, I loved it. It was.
What a nice deep rabbit hole to dive in 15 minutes after midnight, 2 hours and 15 minutes in the show. See people, what can happen in the show.
Absolutely. Yes. And I'm sorry I'm keeping you up after midnight.
No. It's the opposite. It's the opposite. It's good fun.
All right. We're almost done. All right. Erich says, although, we could take a few more super chats, particularly at the $50, $100 level.
100%.
Erich says, the relationship to following movements of the French postmodernism, Foucault, Derrida, et al., and any after that. We will do a show on postmodernism. I think that's essential. I
have a whole shelf on Foucault, so we can discuss Foucault. And spoiler alert, I am more positively inclined to Foucault than your average anti-postmodernist. So it's gonna be interesting and not entirely predictable.
Okay. And any other thinkers that Erich should look into in postmodernism other than Foucault and Derrida?
Well, I don't think you can go into Derrida because he's impenetrable. What you could do is start from Cynical Theories, the book, because what Lindsay and Plackrose do, they give a fair reading to these things. So their first achievement is not that they criticize these ideas. That's why I also gave it to my students at the university. They first explain to you what they say, which is not easy. You're not going to find many books which will codify postmodernism. So start from there.
Cobb, is it true that Bolsheviks were mostly Jewish? That the Bolsheviks were mostly Jewish?
Lenin was not Jewish. Stalin was not Jewish. Khrushchev was not Jewish. Brezhnev was not Jewish.
Head of the KGB,
Beria was not Jewish. Andropov was not Jewish.
So who was Jewish? Trotsky?
Yeah, and how did this turn out for him? Okay, there were many Jews amongst the Bolsheviks, but also, and we can do a show about this, there was institutional anti-Semitism in Soviet Union post-World War II. Proper institutional anti-Semitism. Ask yourselves, why is it that the only people who could leave Soviet Union were the Jews?
They wanted them out.
Exactly.
But here's the thing. Every single intellectual movement out there,
yeah,
every single one, you will find Jews overrepresented. Even in the libertarianism, objectivism, neoconservatism, every single movement on the left and on the right, it doesn't matter, is overrepresented by Jews. And Jews have, over the last 150 years, been mostly left. And there's a reason for that. If you associate the right with the Nazis, if you associate the right with the Dreyfus trial, then Jews, the enemy of the Jews are the people on the right. So they think that they will find allies on the left. They don't, as even in the Soviet Union, Trotsky discovered, right? They don't find allies on the left. But it makes complete sense for the Jews to rebel against the right because the right is persecuting them all over Europe throughout the 19th century and into the 20th century, into the middle of the 20th century. But even then, movements on the right are overrepresented by Jews. So generally intellectual activities, from science to intellectual movements to professors at universities, overrepresented by Jews. And if that is the basis for anti-Semitism, so their achievement is why we should be anti-Semitic. We should hate Jews because they're achievers. It's just bizarre. It's bizarre. Cobb. Yeah, I mean, the Dreyfus trial would be an interesting historical episode to dig into.
And the impact it had,
I mean, it launches the Zionist movement. You don't have Zionism in the form it takes without the Dreyfus trial, but it also has profound impacts on France itself. It was a big European event. It's hard to imagine today that a trial could have the kind of impact it had at the time. So,
and speaking of France, people who think, oh, the Jews and the left are the same, think how many French revolutionaries around the Dreyfus trial are anti-Semites.
Yep.
And how in France, Sorel impacts both the fascists and the Marxian left. So it's not so simple like Jews left, others anti-Semites right.
Yep. Nikos, how do you objectively define status?
Status?
Yeah.
I've never thought of it. I don't know, your reputation in a community, but I never thought about that. I never wonder what my status is in this community or there. But I guess how people view you, and here's probably what is the impact you have on them in terms of, if you tell something, is it going to be taken seriously or not? Maybe this, but I've never thought about it before.
All right. WCZN says, this is good, the Walsh tapes, all of Walsh's stuff, is apparently, almost all of them, a part of the Salem Center YouTube channel. So
that's excellent. Thank you very much.
And it's Brian Kaplan who put them all up there.
Thank you. This is very important because some years ago when I checked, there was almost nothing on the internet. That's very important. Thank you.
Yep. Volta Bischek. The 1990 World Cup was the first for me as well. So
I have a funny story from that World Cup. So I watched the final, West Germany, Argentina, in Crete, in my grandmother's village. And my aunties, my grandmother and her sister, enter the room and it's like, we're obviously with Argentina. I said, yes, but why? I said, you can never be with the Germans. They burned the village. So in 1990, they still had in their mind that the West Germans is basically one generation after the Nazis. And they were traumatized. The Nazis literally burned the whole village. So they were horrified with the idea that anyone could support West Germany.
Yep. My grandmother, till the day she died, I mean, she wouldn't buy anything made in Germany.
Wow.
If you told her I drive a BMW or an Audi, she would be very upset. And she did not. Her family, I think most of her family were killed, but she was not in Europe when it happened. She was in South Africa, so she was spared from the horrors of it. But she would have nothing to do. And as I think I told you, in Israel, you can't play Wagner, right?
Wow.
An orchestra, the people will now today it's a little different maybe, but 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you couldn't play Wagner. People would walk out, they would boo, they would yell, they would interrupt the concert, they wouldn't allow you to play Wagner. So yes, anything associated with Germany, with the Holocaust, with somebody who was anti-Semitic, German, was out. So yeah, people remember these things and they bear a grudge.
And on a lighter note, football-wise, easily the worst World Cup of modern time. Like the football that was played was absolutely The
1990?
1990. Because it was the last World Cup with the old rules, the old offside rules, the rules where you could throw the ball past to the goalkeeper and he could catch it with the hands. So for various reasons, the football was so bad that they had to change the rules after.
All right. Well, the World Cup starts tomorrow.
No, in 10 days.
10 days. 10 days. Oh, wait, that's right. So it'll be on while, yeah, okay. So when does it end? When is the final?
Well,
Middle of
this
July?
time there are so many teams and so
I
many
know.
rounds, probably more than a month from now.
Okay. All right. I'm looking forward to seeing the World Cup. It's my one football engagement of every 4 years, although last time was 3 years ago. So it's this time's a little weird. Messi is playing. I like Messi. I enjoy watching him, so that'll be fun. And no show next week. So no show next week. I'm in New York, and Sunday is I'm traveling. But 2 weeks from now, there will definitely be a show. The topic to be determined. We will let you know as soon as we decide. Yeah, have a great week. Have a great rest. Well, your weekend's over. Have a good week starting today in Greece. Bye, everybody.